During the Phantom Menace, Anakin Skywalker was found by Qui Gon Jinn, which begun his journey from Jedi Knight to Sith Lord in the main timeline. But what if things played out differently? What if Anakin was found earlier on Tatooine by someone who wasn't a Jedi nor Sith, but instead a pirate, one by the name of Hondo Ohnaka? What would have been the fate of the Chosen One and the larger galaxy had this occurred? This will be one of many possibilities that could result in this scenario. As with all what-if stories, there is no definitive answer, as it depends on the writer and the story they want to tell. So, let's enter an alternate universe of the Star Wars timeline, an Elseworlds universe, on what if Hondo raised Anakin. Our story begins a year before the Phantom Menace. On Tatooine, the annual Bunta Eve pod race event was live. On the racetrack, a young Anakin had been participating in the event. This is the same one that Anakin raced in off-screen before the Phantom Menace, which is why during the movie, his pod racer had already been damaged. This is the race where it was destroyed. Out in the crowd, Hondo Ohnaka and his crew of pirates had been enjoying their time, having drinks, cheering, and doing their fair share of betting. The pirates had been on break, deciding to spend their evening at the Bunta Eve event. During the race, Anakin had crashed his pod racer, which severely damaged it. This was due to Sebulba flashing his vents to Anakin, which caused the pod racer to be smashed, but still repairable.
He smashed up my pod in the last race. To take some long time to fix it.
It wasn't my fault, really. Sebulba flashed me with his vents. I actually saved the pod, mostly.
After surviving this, Anakin dragged his vehicle off the track and attempts to repair what remained of it, but to no avail. Young Anakin was persistent on getting back into the race. This quality trait piqued Hondo's interest out in the crowd, especially for a boy his age. He was so young, yet eager to get back into the competition with a busted pod racer. With no hope of rejoining, Anakin was forced to forfeit and leave. Hondo was interested enough in him after the race. He split off from his crew to ask about the Skywalker boy. He soon learned that Anakin was a slave, racing with his master's permission. This made Hondo more interested, as he was once enslaved too. Hondo related to him because he was sold into slavery at a young age by his parents. He saw himself in the boy and a potential pirate apprentice for his crew. Hondo eventually got the name of Anakin's owner and sought him out. It's here where Hondo entered Watto's shop and is greeted by him. Watto greeted Hondo, while Anakin cleaned the racks in the corner. Hondo couldn't believe Watto was working the boy after what he'd just been through. While Hondo was a pirate, he still had a heart, especially for young children who were slaves.
Well, me and my men were in town for the big pod race, you know the one. When our ship was left completely unattended, and what do you know? Someone screwed off a bunch of the parts while we were gone.
Hondo flailed his arms around like a goof, over-exaggerating an obvious lie, since he is playing Watto for a fool.
The Jawas, eh? Tatooine is home to plenty of those. I understand your predicament. I don't mind them, though. They sell me plenty of parts. What is it you are looking for?
The weak-way pirate continued to play dumb.
Well, I'm not much of a mechanic myself. My engineer, he says it's something with the hyperdrive. He sent me to get some parts. But I don't remember now. It makes a sort of the sound when we try to turn the ship on.
Being the sleazy salesman that he is, the Toydarian decided to trick Hondo now into paying him more.
Problem like that. Well, your mechanic is not solving it. You'll have to buy a replacement. Lots of money.
This news didn't surprise Hondo, since he expected it.
Oh no.
Anakin looked up from his work, wondering why Watto mentioned he'd have to buy a new replacement.
What type of ship do you fly? I'll see if I have a drive for that type in stock.
Hondo continued to play dumb, acting as if he didn't know the name of his ship's engine.
ZH-40 Tribune. My engineer said I'd need parts for a Novaldex JV-74. That's the one.
Watto smirked, believing to have trapped Hondo in his scam.
Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but we don't have that kind. Oh, but I could order one. It'll be here in only a few days. Oh, thank you. There will be shipping fees, though. How much?
Anakin suddenly came over with a box full of parts and said he wouldn't have to pay shipping fees at all, just the price for the parts. Everything he needed was in there. As Anakin started explaining where each part would go, Watto told him to shut up. He was annoyed at Anakin for ruining his scam on playing Hondo to rip him off. Hondo called out Watto and said he wouldn't be paying full price for the box, but just half because he lied. Watto pleaded that there was another, more mutually beneficial solution that could be reached. Hondo offered Watto to keep his parts and that he would pay full price for the boy. This shocked both of them. Hondo played Watto like this because he's a slave owner, and he knew when he walked in, he would find a way to get Anakin free. He saw Anakin's prodigal mechanical skills best put to use as a pirate on his ship. Watto denied Hondo's offer until he threatens him with the Hutts, much like Qui Gon did in the movie. Cornered and embarrassed, Watto closed up the store to sell the boy and the detonator for Anakin's neck implant. Leaving the store, Hondo said that Anakin was free now, and his pirate friends would remove the explosive once they got on his ship. Anakin asked why he didn't buy the parts, which is when Hondo revealed his deception from the beginning. However, Anakin interrupted to tell Hondo that his mother Shmi was still Watto's slave. Hondo considered this predicament for a moment. He then told Anakin,
I am a pirate. In time, you too will be a pirate. Life on Florum is harsh. Even for us, it is no place for your mother. But stick with me, Annie, and I will make you rich. Rich enough so that you may come back and free her.
Anakin then asked to be able to say goodbye to his mother. Hondo permitted this as a test for Anakin, to see if he would be able to handle the separation and stress that would come if he became a pirate. Anakin did not break down emotionally when leaving his mother, proving to Hondo that he was man enough for the adventures that lay ahead of him. With that, Hondo returned to his ship with his young mechanic friend. He hoped this investment would be worth it, and he would not lose Anakin to the danger that came with his line of work. As the timeline progresses a year later into the events of the Phantom Menace, everything in the movie played out the same way up until Qui Gon, Padme, and Jar Jar arrived at Watto's junk shop on Tatooine. Instead of Anakin attending the guests and being Watto's mechanic, it is Shmi in this timeline, since she has an affinity for working on machinery, as mentioned in the canon Star Wars book from 2020. While in the shop, Qui-Gon sensed a strange presence that he could not explain. He felt that there was something or someone here he should have met. The scene played out just like in the movie, with Qui-Gon going outside to negotiate with Watto regarding the hyperdrive engine. Padme is left alone with Shmi in the junk shop, and the two have a brief conversation. Afterwards, Qui-Gon, Padme, and Jar Jar leave and venture around Mos Espa. When the sandstorm arrived on Mos Espa, Shmi invited Qui-Gon, Padme, and Jar Jar to her home. She introduced Padme and the others to C-3PO, who's now fully functioning and helping her around the house, since Anakin had been long gone. She mentioned that her son built him. When Padme asked where he was, she deflected it. Later, when Padme asked why she was being so generous, she said that she realized that the problem with the galaxy was that nobody helped each other.
Mom, you say the biggest problem in this universe is nobody helps each other.
While they ate, Shmi told Qui-Gon that she realized he was a Jedi earlier and asked why he was so deep in the Outer Rim. Qui-Gon explained they were on a mission to Coruscant, but they had to hide on Tatooine. Padme explained that their ship was damaged in a battle. They had to replace the hyperdrive, which is why they came to Watto's shop. Unfortunately, they couldn't pay for the hyperdrive. Shmi sympathized with their situation and then offered to help them. She told them that she could secretly let them into Watto's junkyard so that they could steal the needed hyperdrive for their ship. She said that Watto would be away from the shop in a few days' time for the pod race. Although Qui-Gon was adverse to the idea of making more enemies on their mission, he accepted her offer so that they could get to Coruscant faster. After dinner, Qui Gon signaled the ship to send Captain Ohnaka and Obi-Wan into town. Qui Gon also mentioned the strange presence he felt to Obi-Wan when arriving at Mos Espa, which he wanted to investigate. Afterwards, he approached Shmi and told her a few things he had observed. Her face darkened when she mentioned the pod race. She was eager to see Watto stolen from, and yet she didn't seem to want to be freed to come with them. Shmi paused before explaining what had happened the previous year. She held a grudge against Watto for taking her son away from her without any notice, and she did not want to leave Tatooine in case her son returned to look for her here, as well as the bomb placed in her neck by Watto so that she couldn't escape. Besides, she wanted to see the look on Watto's greedy face when he realized he had been stolen from. Qui Gon asked how Anakin was able to pod race with mere human reflexes. Shmi explained that Anakin had the ability to see things before they happened. Qui Gon began to suspect Anakin was force sensitive and asked who his father was. Shmi said there was no father, like in the movie. Qui Gon realized that Anakin was the missing presence he had sensed earlier. Putting all those clues together, he began to strongly suspect Anakin was the prophesized chosen one. Shmi then asked Qui Gon to find her son, if he could, and reunite them. Qui Gon asked permission to possibly train Anakin as a Jedi, which she accepted. Shmi would much rather Anakin be a Jedi than some pirate. On the day of the pod race, Padme returned safely to the Queen's ship. Shmi opened the back gate to the junkyard with her keys, allowing Qui Gon and Obi-Wan to get inside and lift the hyperdrive out of the trash heap with the Force. Once the hyperdrive had been levitated outside, it was tied to Eopes, gathered by Captain Ohnaka, and dragged to the ship. Unbeknownst to them, their actions were being observed by one of Darth Maul's probe droids, who then set off to capture the Queen. Maul caught up with them just a short distance away from the Queen's ship. Qui Gon and Obi-Wan quickly traded blows with the mysterious Sith attacker before leaping onto the ship and blasting away. Later on Coruscant, Qui Gon did not tell the Jedi Council about his suspicions regarding Anakin, as he had no definitive proof. He would ask the Council to go on a personal mission to find Anakin once the crisis of Naboo had been resolved. That's if he survived. Instead of Anakin blowing up the droid ship like in the original timeline, Padme held Gunray at gunpoint and threatened to stop his invasion. He is forced to send a command to shut down the droids. This is how Naboo is saved in this universe. As we reach the final act of the movie, the duel between Darth Maul, Obi-Wan, and Qui Gon plays out similarly in the beginning stages, before they made their way into the generator room, guarded by ray shields. Since Obi-Wan had dueled Maul briefly on Tatooine, he was able to enter the duel with Maul with a more confident, focused mindset. This allowed him to fight better and not get separated from Qui Gon, and instead remained by his side. During the climax of the battle, Darth Maul got the slight upper hand by slicing into Qui Gon's shoulder, which left him open to get knocked into the pit with no guardrails. However, Qui Gon managed to hold on, but with only one arm. He couldn't lift himself out due to the injury on his shoulder, by not being able to put weight on it. Obi-Wan got angry and engaged Maul in heated combat. The fight ultimately concluded with Kenobi slicing Maul in half and knocking him down the shaft, before rescuing his master. After the crisis of Naboo, Obi-Wan was officially knighted. Elsewhere in the galaxy, young Anakin had been accustomed to his new life as a pirate with Hondo's gang. In his first 2 years with Hondo, Anakin spent most of his time on Florum, where Hondo's main base of operations was located. His routine mainly consisted of manual labor, which comprised of mechanical work, such as fixing and repairing the many speeders, droids, and starships owned by the Ohnaka gang. Early on, Anakin enjoyed his new life as a pirate, but over time he began to feel upset, since he was doing the same thing as a slave back on Tatooine, except now he's alone, without his mother. Though Anakin did make some new friends along the way, within Hondo's gang. The following year, sometime after the crisis of Naboo, Anakin had been fidgeting with some tools. As he was fixing something, he reached for a tool on his workbench, and to his surprise, the tool flew into his hand. Anakin was astonished and couldn't believe what he had just done. This was his first ever exposure to his own Force sensitivity, much like the Jedi that he would hear about in stories. He tried to reach for something else again, but to no avail. Over the course of the following week, Anakin had been secretly using the Force for minor tasks, such as mechanical repairs and labor work. He wasn't sure how to bring this new discovery to Hondo. He was unsure of how he'd react. Eventually, young Annie built the courage to show Hondo. He entered his private quarters and revealed his Force connection by levitating small dice in his hand. Hondo couldn't believe the sight. The boy he bought was Force sensitive, like a Jedi. The sight of the levitating dice gave Hondo an idea, one that would make him a lot of money. He exclaimed to Anakin that his investment in him would most definitely be profitable, and it's here where Hondo explained to Anakin that they can cheat many gamblers with this new trick and make more money than they can ever imagine. Their faces lit up with excitement, and Anakin would have a colorful but fruitful journey ahead. Hondo and Anakin quickly began using his Force powers to turn a profit. First, they frequented the casinos in Canto Bight and on the wheel, meddling with the outcomes of chance cube rolls and predicting the outcome of Jubilee Wheel. Then came the more complicated scams. First, Anakin suggested returning to pod racing under a false name and using his new abilities to cheat far better than Sebulba could. After a few years of this, Anakin grew tired of pulling the same scams over and over again. After thinking for a while, he realized his position hadn't really changed since he discovered his powers. He was still doing work at Hondo's bidding. The only thing that changed was how valuable he was as an asset. Worse, this situation was also not very different from the one he had with Watto. When Anakin followed Hondo, he expected to be free. When he proved how powerful he was, he expected the same thing. But he was still a slave at the end of the day. Anakin grew angry and confronted Hondo. He criticized him for not being taken seriously and asked for the ability to choose his own work and his own scams, just like the rest of Hondo's gang. He asked to be freer and independent in what he did. Hondo was surprised by Anakin, but he listened to reason. Besides, Hondo knew better than most that a positive attitude was key to success. If he was keeping Anakin down like that, he was turning down valuable profits. Hondo accepted Anakin's demands, and Anakin became a truly free pirate. Hondo and Anakin's relationship flourished greatly over the next few years. In this series of events, Hondo grew to be Anakin's parental figure in the absence of his mother, rather than the Jedi like Qui Gon and Obi-Wan. The Anakin of this timeline inherited the charm and positivity of Hondo, but still retained his smug attitude. And this is where part 1 of this story ends.